What is the better value car, the C8 Z06 or the C7 Z06? Today, we're going to do an in-depth drive on both cars because, oh my gosh, these are both such good cars and a really, really good question to ask. A few of you have asked me, what would you rather have? Well, we need to account for the price of both cars. The C8 Z06s are starting to drop in value, and used, you're looking at around $120,000. This particular spec has the 2LZ package with the carbon fiber splitter, side skirt, roof, and spoiler. By the way, the spoiler is $6,000 to install from the factory. That's a bit ridiculous. But now that this thing is officially a supercar, you start to pay supercar prices. So let's go ahead and start with the C8 Z06, and first of all talk about the design of this car. There's a huge pro and con here. The pro is that this has much more supercar looks than the C7 Z06. The con is that, well, is it really worthy of a Corvette badge? You could slap a Ferrari badge right there, and most people who don't know anything about cars would think nothing of it. They would believe it, without a doubt. And so Corvette is now headed in the direction of just being a supercar if they continue down this path. And gosh, the C8 ZR1 arguably is a hypercar, not even a supercar. 1,000 horsepower, I cannot wait to see what that thing is capable of. But on the topic of C8s and C7s, this is going to be a really good comparison because underneath, well, not the hood, but the trunk, let's pop it real quick, is a 5.5 liter flat plane crank V8. Naturally aspirated too. When you look at the C7 Z06, I mean, these are now incredibly different cars. The design, the engine, everything, the engineering, the interior. I mean, but again, you're looking at a cost of $50,000 to $60,000 more than the C7 Z06, and the question is it really worth it? And by the way, before we hop in this thing, I thought the 335 tire width on the C7 Z06 was already insane, but on the C8 Z06, the tire width is now 345. That is the largest tire in terms of width that I've ever seen on any car, ever. If you can't name a car that has a wider tire than the C8 Z06, that's incredible. All right, let's go ahead and hop in the C8 Z06, and we're gonna take a blast from the past right after driving this thing, but you're gonna notice the differences in the interior. Sorry, the car just shut me up. You're gonna notice the difference in the interiors big time between the C8 and the C7. Whether it's for the better or the worse, we're gonna talk about it because this interior is certainly not perfect and it does have its downfalls. All right, weird thing number one is that there's no gear lever, and I just wanna pull the thing back, but instead it's this more supercar style switches to change from park, reverse, neutral drive. So that's going to take some getting used to. I kind of prefer the more manly gear lever, and not to mention, while we're on that point, well, the C8 Z06 and Stingray has no manual transmission option. Unfortunately, the way the car industry is headed and the buyers of cars, people are just not really getting manuals that often anymore. And that is the reason why so many car manufacturers are headed more in the direction of just making automatic cars. Sorry, it's a tradition that we always do an acceleration here, so let's do that. And well, I'm glad that we just did that acceleration because we got to experience how fast the dual clutch automatic transmission shifts in the C8 Corvette. I know some car enthusiasts are just die-hard manuals. Those are the guys leaving comments saying, automatic trash, oh, it's not a manual, where's the gear shifter? It's like, bro, relax, respect the differences. If there's no differences, everything's the same, that's just boring. So I must say, with this having the dual clutch automatic, it's not as depressing that you don't have the manual option. But if you do enjoy manuals, and I get it, that is a massive factor to what makes a car fun to drive, then that is where the C7 Z06 becomes a phenomenal car to buy, because it's $50,000 cheaper. We'll talk about the comparisons in acceleration in a second, and driving it and daily ability and all that. But the fact that there just isn't a manual option in this car, that's a pretty big deal. And so that's a huge plus to the C7 Z06. Just because this has a dual clutch automatic, I'm gonna say the transmission between the C7 and the C8 is a tie. Because when you drive an automatic C7 Z06, which, to make this fair, we are gonna be comparing this to an automatic C7 Z06, it is so much better, so much faster, and so much more responsive than an automatic C7. And so I love the dual clutch, and it's hard to jump back into a non-dual clutch, or just single clutch, automatic transmission after driving one of these. Now, to touch on the interior, this is so much more technologically advanced. You know, in the C7, a massive complaint with the infotainment screen is how laggy it is. This one is instantaneous. It's just like when you're using your phone. You click, it does it. You click, it does it. And it doesn't require this like hard input. Whereas the C7, the infotainment screen there, you really have to press on it hard for it to actually do what you want it to do. And so I like how this is a lot more in the direction of just modern day type of technology. The actual gauge cluster, by the way, not a whole lot of differences. I mean, the adjustable modes that you have in the gauge cluster, it's actually almost identical to the C7. Track mode is just a little bit different. Here is the track mode in this. There we go. Still, honestly, a little bit of lag in the gauge cluster with this car. The Z06 has more of a not straight line. You'll see when we drive the car. But real quick, let's do acceleration. Oh my gosh, it cut power there, and then it really romped it on, as you can see. I had my foot down the whole time on that. And this car is like, it's like a video game driving it. It is such a thrill. Wow. But anyway, you're gonna have a lot more adjustable stuff in here as well inside of the infotainment screen. Let's jump over to Z mode. Steering, suspension, engine, shifting, brake feel, engine sound, PTM. I actually don't know what PTM is. If you do, feel free to drop it down in the comments. The rest of the stuff is obviously obvious. But yeah, you have a lot more customization inside of the interior of this car. Still a very similar layout in terms of the cockpit feeling, like in the C7. But this is weird. I like the C7 better in terms of sort of the organization of buttons. I get it, there's probably, it was a hard thing to design, you know, having all these options, which most of this stuff should be in the infotainment screen anyway, but you do want quick access to the stuff you want to just press now. Climate control, heated and cooled seats, your heated steering wheel button is on the steering wheel. A lot of this stuff makes sense. But if you are looking to get quick access here, it's just kind of annoying because the buttons are pretty small and you might have to take your eyes off of the road to look and see if you're pressing the right thing. That's a bit annoying. So that's really the only design flaw with the interior layout. But this is kind of half interior, half exterior, and that is the visibility in this car. The visibility in the C7 Z06 and C7 Stingray is far better in the C7 than it is in the C8. First of all, Exhibit A, they had to include this rear view camera here because you can't see anything with the engine being right there. This is very cool, by the way, and I actually like this more than having it just be glass, especially at night. It works phenomenal at night, by the way. But the mirror there, the B pillar, the A pillar and the mirror on this side are honestly not that bad, but that is pretty bad. But worst of all is when you go to switch lanes, you can't see anything. Anyway though, enough about boring stuff. To talk about the differences in driving, the C8 Z06 has, first of all, the C8 period. this has set the standard for the evolution of Corvettes. This is by far the most refined, craziest, exceeding expectations type of new generation Corvette that Chevy has ever created. And let me wait to get out of the sun here. All right, that's more like it. So from everything, from the steering, again, it's a mid-engine car. You're sitting in the center of this thing. The steering is so sharp. The cornering, I am way more confident in the corners with this car than I am with the C7 Z06. I pushed this thing in the corners, and it feels a lot better to me than in the C7 Z06. And I'm not here to downplay the C7 Z06. It is a really good cornering car, but this is just much better. And not to mention, it is much better at launching off of the line too. You can only do so much with engineering on a front engine car. When you put it in the middle, it fixes so many of the problems. Again, it's hard to consider them problems just because of how good of a car the C7 Z06 is in the first place. But you don't realize how much of a difference a mid-engine car makes till you end up driving one and actually pushing the car for what it was built for, in terms of flooring it, launching it, cornering it. That's where you really feel the differences, especially when you're pushing the car to its limits. I'm gonna be honest, they are both equally as insane. This does make 20 more horsepower than the C7 Z06. However, it makes 190 less pound-feet of torque. This is a naturally aspirated engine. The C7 Z06 has a supercharger on it. They are very different feeling cars. If you like more raw power, more, I don't want to say insanity, but just more raw, more of a Corvette type of feeling to it, where you're kind of fighting for traction. It's screaming like a bald eagle, like America. That's the C7 Z06 is the car you want to get, especially if you want to get a manual too. Guys, I'll say right off the bat, my expectations for the comparison of these two cars is about 80% of you, maybe 75% will say C8 Z06, and the other 25% will say C7 Z06. Undeniably, this car is absolutely beautiful. It resonates a bit more with the history of Corvette. Again, the C8 being such a total makeover, and it doesn't resemble the past generations at all. This one does. The design of this is so unique. It's like beautiful, yet sporty, yet kind of like a rocket ship. It's done so unbelievably well. Let me know in the comments, by the way, what do you think looks better? The C7 Z06 or the C8 Z06? And the C7 Z06, by the way, does get some modifications over just the Stingray. For example, that nice splitter in the front, it's wider both in the front and the back. That is one of the telltale signs you're looking at a Z06. You can see the fenders really coming out there. That looks very, very nice. As well as wider tires in the back, clear tail lights. So a few subtle signs, the Z06 badge, obviously. A few subtle signs that you're looking at a Z06 instead of a Stingray. Now, obviously, we're working with a very, very different engine in the C7 Z06. It is a bit windy, so hopefully this doesn't fall. We have more of an old school Corvette engine. It's kind of sad that I'm calling that old school now, but LT4, supercharged V8, 650 horsepower and 650 pound-feet of torque. Incredible. The C8 Z06 only makes about 20 more horsepower over the C7 Z06, but significantly less torque. All right, let's go ahead and hop in here, and of course we're going to start with the interior design, which, well, let's actually hop inside of the car before we start talking about it. I mean, right away, first of all, you're just going to notice, yeah, it feels older. Not old, but definitely older. It still has that cockpit-like design where everything's facing the driver, a little less exaggerated than what's in the C8. I mean, in the C8, they really made sure. If you didn't know it was a cockpit fighter jet design before, you're gonna know it now. But nonetheless, this is just enough Let's start it up. So, the technology in here is just undeniably, obviously, more outdated. And, you know, that's an important note to make, because this infotainment screen can just be a bit more tedious, slower, you gotta press hard, it's lagging. Oh, this is annoying. In this C8 Z06, things, it feels like you're honestly just using your phone or an iPad, and that is a really, really big plus to the C8 Z06. So, you know, this isn't really the reason why you'd spend the extra $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 to get a Z06, but it is just one nice little thing. You don't realize how nice it is until you actually spend time with the C8 Z06. Yeah, a bit of a blast from the past with the interior here, although the past, I mean, well, I guess 2016, when the Z06 was, the Z06, C7 Z06 come out in 2015 or 2016. Nonetheless, though, when they came out, that's about, yeah, at this point, 9 or 10 years ago. I do kind of like older technology. It feels a little bit more nostalgic. So I'm not going to really complain about the technology. That's not the point of the car. So nonetheless, let's get moving here and talk about what the point of the car actually is, which is driving it. And if you guys have watched the channel, you know we've done so many videos on the gray manual C7 Z06. And well, before I talk about the manual, let's do this thing. Still waiting for the engine to warm up a little bit, so I'm really not gonna touch 5,000 RPM just yet. Don't worry, we will. But okay, first of all, obviously we have the engine in the front this time. We have a lot of, honestly, comparing it to the C8 Z06, that's a lot of space back there. Comparing it to a daily driver, yeah, obviously not. But you feel a bit more American in this car. I know it probably sounds really weird, but you do. A massive displacement engine up front, a gnarly sounding V8 coming out of the back, which is, it's not flat plane crank like the C8 Z06. I mean, the difference in the sound between the two cars is just unmistakable. They do not sound like they were made by the same manufacturer in any way whatsoever. Don't get me wrong though, obviously having a mid-engine car makes the handling and all that feel a lot better, but this thing can handle extremely well. Now, the area where you really notice the difference between front and mid-engine is going to be actually accelerating in this car. Same temperature outside. Let's do an acceleration in this thing. Ready? It's just spinning. Now, don't get me wrong, normally, if you have grippier tires and it's summertime, the road is, you know, it's about 70, 80, 90 degrees outside, the tires are warmed up, you're gonna have a great time, you're not gonna be losing traction like that. But the fact that the C8 Z06 could flawlessly, near flawlessly, launch in 30-degree weather with 670 horsepower is pretty hard to believe. But that's the thing though, right? In a supercar, in like a Ferrari, Lamborghini-like car, you want that. The C7 Z06 just feels more American, it feels more raw. So you are kind of gripping, you're fishtailing a little bit, you're listening to that American bald eagle absolutely scream. That supercharger is right there, all coming from the front end of the car. I mean, it feels just, it feels like a Corvette should. So on the basis of acceleration, the C8 Z06 wins, without a doubt. It's gonna launch better than this thing every single time, but from a roll race, these are neck and neck. Just what makes the C8 Z06 take it is because the launches are just phenomenal. As for sound, you know, this is tough. This is really tough. It just depends if you like that more high revving sound or if you like that more American sound. I'm torn, but Oh my gosh, I don't even know if I can decide this one. I have to give it a tie. When I hear the C8 Z06 fly by me, I love it. When I hear the C7 Z06 fly by me, I love it. They're equal, if you ask me. They're so different, but I cannot decide which one sounds better. Now, which one has the better transmission? The dual clutch in the C8 Z06 is just infinitely times better than the automatic in this one. Look at the difference. Oh, it's so slow. Let's go to second. Oh my gosh, okay, yeah. The sound this thing makes when it shifts is crazy. But yeah, the shifts are so slow, especially after you hop out of the C8 Z06. It's no comparison. But just because this does have the manual option, but the automatic in the C8 Z06 is better, the transmission is going to be a tie for me. I hear a lot of people talking about the transmission in the C8's braking. I don't really understand why, and I haven't really looked too much into that. If you have any information about why so many comments are saying that the dual clutch in the C8 Z06 is just going to brake, please drop that down, because I'd love to read into why people say that. If it is true that the reliability is actually that bad with the dual clutch, then I will say the C7 Z06 does have just the better overall transmission option. The rowdiness of this car, oh my gosh, it brings tears to my eyes. Wow. Both are just such good options. And I mean, with the C7 Z06 being $70,000 and the C8 Z06 being, well, 120 plus, if you're really, really fiending to have your first, like, awesome car, I do not blame you if you just get the C7 Z06. In fact, I honestly would argue to do it. It's a more proven platform. They've been around longer. We see a lot more high mileage examples of C7 Z06s than we do C8 Z06s for now. Could turn out that the C8 Z06 is more reliable, but we just don't know that yet. It'd be hard to, and of course you're welcomed into the Corvette heritage there. Gotta love the waves. I get more waves from Corvette owners than I do Mustang owners in my GT350. And there's a 5.0 right there. Makes me want to take this car out a lot more, because I don't know, the community is just way better with Corvettes. If I had infinite money, but I could only have one or the other, I would get the C8 Z06. But it is not worth an extra $50,000 if you ask me. Nonetheless, guys, I appreciate you all for watching. If you have any other questions about what it's like to drive the two cars and the differences, let me know. But as always, love you all, and I will see you very, very soon in the next video. Peace out.